Hey folks, welcome back. This is part three of my complete horror and science fiction film collection. So let's start off with the DVDs in alphabetical order. All right. Number one, this fantastic documentary, 100 Years of Horror, narrated by Christopher Lee. This has almost 11 hours of film of material. Christopher Lee, I could listen to him talk for 11 hours, and he covers the entire history of horror movies from the silent days. Anyway, it's absolutely essential. If you don't have this, why not? This comes from Mill Creek Entertainment. All right. Next up, we have 2001: A Space Odyssey. I picked this up at Big Lots for $3 many years ago. I mean, what a bargain! And it's a very good print. Although, spoiler alert, I have actually upgraded to a Blu-ray of 2001, but I'll probably keep this anyway. Okay, great movie. So now I have two copies of this on home video. I have never watched this on home video. I've seen it on the big screen, I think 4 times over these many years, and have yet to watch it at home. So one of these days, I'll get around to it. Next up is The Alligator People. Great monster movie from 1959. Beverly Garland, who is the guy that plays this? Richard Crane plays this unfortunate man who becomes, well, sort of half alligator. We also have George McCready. We have Bruce Bennett. We have Lon Chaney Jr. It's a terrific monster movie, and I think this has been published in upgrade Blu-ray too. I don't know. Nerve-shattering terror. Yes, it certainly is. Okay, next up is a film called The Amazing Mr. X from 1948, starring Lynn Barry, Turhan Bey, Kathy O'Donnell, and Richard Carlson. I keep this with my horror movies. It's described here as a 1940s gothic suspense noir. Okay, so that's a lot of description there, but it's kind of a horror film, more of a thriller with some very good cinematography. It's very ghostly imagery, so a lot of fun. Next up is a movie that just about everybody likes: Bruce Willis in Armageddon. Okay, good flick, good science fiction flick. Next up is Steven Spielberg's Artificial Intelligence, which I didn't watch until many years after it came out. Haley Joel Osment, Jude Law. Uh, very good film. Very well done. Yeah. A1 is pure magic. Yes, it is. Right. Next up is a terrific schlocky science fiction movie from 1958 called The Astounding She Monster. And prepare to be astounded at how bad this movie is. No, this is one of those movies that, how some low budget schlock movies are so bad they're good. This is so bad it's worse, but it doesn't mean it's not great fun to watch. These criminals decide to kidnap a very rich lady, young woman, and they take her out in the country, and they end up this sort of out of the way cabin where who's the guy? Robert Clark. Robert Clark, who's kind of a well known figure in genre films. Robert Clark. Anyway, they stay at his house, so they're kind of commandeering not only Robert Clark's life, but this young woman. But then a woman from outer space shows up and begins to threaten all of them. It's so, well, it's just indescribable. All right. Here's here's the Astro Zombies. Now it doesn't get any more cultic than this. This is such a cool movie, and I also have the sequel, which I'll show you later. Wendell Corey, John Carradine, um, and Tura Satana. I don't have words to describe Tura Satana. You can see a little picture over there, maybe. But this is a very cool movie, 1967, directed by Ted V. Michaels. All right. Next up is, okay, At Midnight I'll Take Your Soul, starring Coffin Joe. This is the one and only Coffin Joe film that I have. It has trailers. This was the first one from 1963. It has trailers for some of the following follow-up films of Coffin Joe, and I decided not to buy them after seeing the trailers. But this is really freaky. I just had to know what Coffin Joe was all about. Striking imagery. That's pretty much all I can say. And I think the name Coffin Joe in Brazilian, I believe it's Seto Kaicho, which means Joe the Grave. And Glad I have this. I remember there was a box set that came out where it was actually a gigantic, a little, well, gigantic, a little coffin filled with all the DVDs. I kind of wish I had got that, but I don't think I would enjoy the rest of these films, but maybe I would have. I don't know. Next up is a true classic, Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, 1958, starring Allison Hayes in the title role. We also have William Hudson as her evil husband and Yvette Vickers as a sleazy tart. And this is so much fun. Absolutely essential for anybody who likes sci-fi from the 1950s. And this includes a commentary featuring Yvette Vickers and film historian Tom Weaver. Okay, so absolutely essential. One. Now we have Atom Age Vampire. This is an Italian film. Came out in 60. This is 1960, and it's in black and white. Alberto Lupo, Suzanne Leray. It's all about a guy who is trying to save this young woman's beauty. And I can't remember now the plot. I haven't watched this for quite a while, but somehow he turns into a bloodlusting freak. Um, I can't remember now how, but he did. So this is from Alpha Video. Not a bad print. I don't know. Does anybody know if this has ever been upgraded to a Blu-ray or a better DVD release? I really don't know. Next up is the first Batman movie from Michael Keaton. I've had this for years and I've never watched it, which explains why I had to go out and buy this. This is all four of the original Batman films, and I haven't watched any of them. So someday, I think I'm due for a Batman marathon. Here's a science fiction film called Battle Beyond the Sun. Now, this has an interesting history. Let's see. It started out as a Russian film, very, very somber. And when it came to the United States, Roger Corman got a hold of it, decided to make some changes. So he hired a young director named Francis Ford Coppola to do some re-editing and shoot some other scenes and make it more uh, likable for American audiences. But it's a pretty good little film, lots of good imagery. Okay, all right. Next up is a schlock masterpiece, The Beach Girls and the Monster, starring John Hall, a very famous actor from the 1930s who also directed the film. I think this was the last thing that John Hall ever did, and it makes no logical sense at all, but it is absolutely great fun. And the monster is a real hoot. And the music is by Frank Sinatra Jr. Not that that's terribly important because the music is very inconsequential, but anyway, so Beach Girls and the Monster. And this is a very good little science fiction movie, Beast from Haunted Cave. All right, Beast from Haunted Cave. This is from 1959. Stars Michael Forrest, Sheila Carroll. Um, a very creepy movie. I wish there were a really good release of this, and maybe some of you can tell me if there has been, about a monster that's in a cave and all the people that get trapped in the cave with the monster. And yeah, it's very good, very much worth seeing. All right, onwards and upwards. Then we get to The Beast of Yucca Flats, or do you say Yucca? Some people do. Starring the totally unique Tor Johnson as the Beast. He plays a scientist who I don't know, gets manhandled by some nuclear waste or something like that, nuclear explosion, and he turns into a monster. He turns into the Beast of Yucca Flats, and he just sort of wanders around looking like Tor Johnson. Of course, this is a guy who was in Plan 9 from Outer Space, Bride of the Monster, and The Unearthly. Very lovable guy, Tor Johnson. All right. Next up is a very campy and cool science fiction classic from 1958, I believe, The Beginning of the End. Oh, wow. This has Peter Graves, Peggy Castle, Morris Ankrum. This is um, insects that grow to huge proportions and start to take over the world. What's fascinating about this is it takes place in central Illinois, which is where I live, and it names some of the towns around here, like Paxton, which, I'm just a short drive from this town. And what's fascinating is they keep talking about things happening in Illinois, and then they end up in Chicago. But when you see the film, you see mountains everywhere, which, if you've ever been to Illinois, the last thing we have is mountains. It's about as flat as it gets. So it's a real hoot. but it's a lot of fun, right? I think they're giant grasshoppers. Yeah, something like that. And here we go. Doesn't get any better than this. Better. Batter. Doesn't get any better than this. Or badder, maybe. Bela Lugosi meets a Brooklyn gorilla. All right. From the early 1950s. Yeah, 1952. Uh, I'm not sure how Bela got hooked into this one, but it's just a lot of ridiculous fun. Duke Mitchell and Sammy Petrillo, who were a couple of guys who did an imitation of Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis and got in a little bit of trouble for it with Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. But this is a very fun movie. Okay, Bela Lugosi meets a Brooklyn gorilla. Now we get to the good stuff. This is a film called Barbarian Sound Studio, starring let's see, who was the director? Peter Strickland. I don't know anything about Peter Strickland beyond this film. A New World of Sound Awaits You. This is from 2012 or 2013. An English actor named Toby Jones plays an English sound effects expert who goes to Italy to create the sound effects for a giallo film that is being produced. Right, so he's suffering from culture shock, language shock, and he's spending all of his waking moments watching this unbelievably violent giallo film, and he gets very affected by it. And the lines between reality and unreality start to be crossed. By the end, it gets very mystical. What's fascinating about this film is people watching this movie, don't get to see anything of the movie within the movie. We see Toby Jones and the other people in the crew looking. Basically, they're looking just like I'm looking at you right now. They're watching the screen. We get to hear the sound of all this violence. We get to see their reactions to it. The sound man from England has never seen anything like this before, and you can see by the expressions on his face and things he says, like, what are they doing to her, that he is just being so affected by this violence. It's fascinating, beautifully done, and for someone like me who doesn't like violence, this is a very good commentary on what violence can do to you. Highly recommended. Fantastic movie all the way around. All right. Toby Jones, very good actor. Next up, we're back to Schlock again. Billy the Kid versus Dracula, starring John Carradine and Chuck Courtney and Melinda Plowman. This is so much fun. Um, this is from, let's see, Cheesy Flicks, cheesyflix.com. So have a good time. Next up is probably the first, well, it's one of the first giallo films, and I believe it's Dario Argento's first film, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, from 1969. And Tony Musante, Susie Kendall. Very, very disturbing murder mystery thriller, and everything about it. Not just the way the killings are filmed and all this stuff, but the music that they use, the way the camera is used. Really a fascinating and well-made film, right? All right. Next up is Blackula. This is a film that I saw when it first came out. Who's this guy that plays this? William Marshall. Yeah, great actor. I saw this when it first came out. Sent away for this years ago from oldies.com, and I've still never opened it. So I have not watched this at home yet. And his bite was out of sight. Yes, it certainly was. So, Blackula. Next up is a Bela Lugosi film called Black Dragons, one of his famous Monogram 9 that he made in the 1940s at Monogram Studios. And I just recently watched this for the first time, and it is not a horror film. Of course, all these films that Bela Lugosi made at Monogram in the 1940s were packaged as if they were going to be horror films, even if they were just mysteries. This is kind of a political thriller. It's actually very well done for what it is, a low-budget, quickly made film. Also starring Joan Barclay and a very young Clayton Moore, who, of course, became the Lone Ranger, right? Next up, this is a Mexican horror film, very highly recommended, The Black Pit of Dr. M. Black and white, beautifully shot film from Casa Negra Productions. And, wow, lots of extra features. It's about a mad scientist. I can't remember now. It's been a while since I watched it, so I can't remember all the details, but lots and lots of extra features. And it's the original uncut version in Spanish with English subtitles, thank heavens. Yeah, very good movie. If you haven't seen any of these Mexican horror films, you really need to check them out. Some of them are terrific. And right, next up is an Italian classic. This is Black Sabbath, starring Boris Karloff, one of Mario Bava's greatest films. This is from the Mario Bava collection that was put out by Image Entertainment many, many years ago. And this is the original Italian version with English subtitles. It's called The Three Faces of Fear. Of course, this is the one where you do not get to hear Karloff's voice because he didn't speak Italian. He was dubbed by another actor. But so this is not the version that was released by American International Pictures in the United States. But in either version, this is absolutely essential for horror fans, fans of gothic horror. It's in color. Bava was every bit as much an expert with color as he had been with black and white. So it's just three stories. All of them are terrific. All right, next up is the final cut of Blade Runner. This is a film that I didn't get around to seeing until many, many years after its release, and I do like it. I like it very much. I'm not that crazy about the sequel, but I do like this original. All right. So, and here's one of my favorite movies. Kind of controversial even now. A lot of people don't like it. It's called The Blair Witch Project. Um, I still say it's one of the most brilliant concepts and one of the most brilliant ideas and marketing campaigns that was ever started. It was so successful. And yeah, I saw this a couple of years ago again in a film class, and a lot of people in the class, all senior citizens like me, had never seen this, didn't know anything about the fact that they thought this really was a found footage phenomenon that was real, and it was funny to hear people to watch and listen to people's reactions, thinking, "Oh, you mean this really was not real?" Oh, no, but yeah, terrific movie. Now we get to Mario Bava's Blood and Black Lace, which I guess most people would say this is the first giallo film. This is from 1963, uh, in color. Cameron Mitchell, Ava Bartok, beautifully stylish and unbelievably creepy, and beautiful use of color, music, everything. Bava was just a master at films like this. But all it is really is just an exercise in detailed killings of beautiful women. That's pretty much all it is, and that's so. I guess I don't know that much about the giallo genre, but I think that's mainly why they were made. And someone can argue back and forth with me, but this I like this because it's Mario Bava, and because it really is, for what it is, it's so incredibly well done. But it's kind of creepy, you know. It's got some really ugly scenes in it about what happens to these young women. What the heck? Next up is a French film from Roger Vadim, Blood and Roses. This is an excellent romantic, visually beautiful adaptation of Sheridan Le Fanu's short novel Carmilla, and it's beautiful. It stars Elsa Martinelli, Mel Ferrer, and Annette Vadim, who at the time was married to Roger Vadim, and very much worthwhile. Okay, and I got this from the TrashPalace.com. Surprisingly good print. Okay, next up is Andy Warhol's Blood for Dracula, starring Udo Kier and what's his name? Joe D'Alessandro, of course, directed by Paul Morrissey. Now, this was put out by the Criterion Collection, but I got this as a bootleg. So, out of a sense of guilt and respect for the Criterion Collection, I don't keep this with the other Criterions. And I actually haven't watched it since I got it, so I don't know what the print is like. But anyway, Blood for Dracula, which I saw on the big screen way back when it first came out after watching Andy Warhol's Frankenstein, which, if I remember correctly, was in 3D, wasn't it? I think it was. You know, I remember this as being a very atmospheric and creepy movie. Next up, in celebration of the life and career of Tommy Kirk, who passed away just a few days ago, here is a very strange and really bad film called Blood of Ghastly Horror, directed by Al Adamson. And Tommy Kirk has a small role as as a police detective who's trying to solve this mystery. The real mystery is this movie because it started out as one thing, and then Adamson kept going back and making changes in his original film, and making it, adding scenes and making it more of a supernatural thriller and all kinds of things. But it's kind of fun to watch. I wrote a good, well, what I consider to be a funny, snarky review of this on my blog several years ago. This is the only Troma film that I still own. And the star of the film, we have John Carradine, who plays the maddest of the mad scientists, Kent Taylor, Tommy Kirk, and Regina Carroll. So yeah, this is a lot of fun. I would recommend it. Okay. Then we have from Something Weird Video. This is Bloody Pit of Horror, starring Mickey Hargitay, bodybuilding champion, actor, and also once the husband of Jane Mansfield, and I think mother of most of his children, and I mean father of most of his children. What am I saying? Yeah, no, he was the father of most of her children. Sorry, I'm all confused here. So this is all about a guy who loses his mind and thinks that he is the resurrection of this ancient killer known as the Crimson Executioner, and he goes wacko, and all of these people in a film crew decide to sort of take up residence in his Gothic castle in Italy, and to make a movie, and he decides that he just loses his mind. He starts killing people. So there's really not much to this, other than the fact that it's just really freaky. But again, it's just a series of brutal killings. It's not quite as graphic as some movies of this ilk. But Something Weird Video. Yeah, okay. And the last thing is another Mexican monster film. This is called The Bloody Vampire, which I haven't watched in a while, but this is a black and white film, which is, very atmospheric. Some of these Mexican monster films were just really very cool and atmospheric. So highly recommended. Well, maybe not that highly, but recommended anyway. So that's part 3. Thanks for watching. Sorry to keep us along, and comments are welcome.